The story begins on a dark and stormy day, near a somber mansion. Akira, the silent assassin, confronts another assassin who is also after his intended target. Feeling at a disadvantage, the other assassin refuses to surrender and pulls out a hidden weapon from his clothing. He lunges forward and throws the blades at Akira, who dodges them with almost ghostly movements. Then, the enemy charges with a sword, and they both exchange quick and precise blows. In the midst of the confrontation, Akira disarms the opponent, causing their sword to fly through the air. But the man pulls out more daggers and continues his attack. Akira skillfully dodges every single throw until his adversary pulls out their last secret weapon. To his surprise, Akira disappears before his eyes and then reappears behind him. The assassin attempts to find an opening, but Akira expertly blocks all blows and forces him downwards. He attempts to counterattack with a kick using a bladed shoe, but Akira anticipates the movement, injures his arm, and shatters his leg, bringing him to the ground. Having no alternative, the opponent accepts defeat, and his own sword drops on him, bringing the fight to an end. Subsequently, the silent assassin stealthily infiltrates the somber mansion and proceeds to observe the sleeping man. He hesitates for a moment but raises his sword, determined to fulfill his mission. Before all of this, however, Akira was merely an ordinary student in Japan. During his school days, some girls invite his friend Tsukasa to have lunch with them, but he turns them down, stating he has student council duties. The girls are impressed by his dedication as president, admiring his commitment. At another table, some students are expressing their gratitude to a girl named Shiori for assisting them with something. Meanwhile, Akira is engrossed in reading novels on his phone when a friend approaches him for a chat. The guy asks if he likes Ice Sky, but Akira coldly replies that he'll take anything if it's free. His friend nods and takes his leave, requesting that he recommend more complimentary stories if he encounters any. As he leaves, several curious girls start to comment on who he was just talking to. While having lunch, Akira himself is surprised that someone would even speak to him, as he is practically invisible at school. All of a sudden, his phone begins to glitch, and a strange darkness emerges on the classroom ceiling. The shadow then morphs into a magic circle that spreads out beneath the students' feet. Everyone panics and freaks out as the magic circle teleports them to a huge castle. Confused, they attempt to determine their whereabouts until a priest materializes and declares that the king awaits their presence. Once the man departs, the students see a king and princess before them, and they begin to wonder who exactly they could be. The king explains he summoned them from another planet to the world of Morgan. He reveals they are in the Redes Empire, on the human continent, which is currently being invaded by demons. The king declares that as warriors from another world, they have the power to defeat the demon lord, and they all get excited about the idea of a great journey. However, the priest informs them that only one of them can be the legendary hero and requests them to test their abilities. A boy places his hand on a magic sphere, but finds out he isn't the chosen one. The priest reassures him, saying that even so, he will still be a powerful soldier. Subsequently, a girl named Yuki finds out she possesses the abilities of a dispersion mage, and Tomoya, in turn, discovers he is a knight. After Shiori discovers she's a healer, the priest explains that everyone can see their status even without needing to touch the sphere. The students begin to assess their abilities, and Nanis inquires of Akira what his are. He reveals he's an assassin, but becomes confused when he sees his stats are absurdly high. Immediately after, Tsukasa places his hand on the sphere, revealing his heroic potential, receiving the priest's commendation and the applause of all his fellow students. Akira, however, is puzzled by how Tsukasa could be hailed as a hero despite having such meager stats, especially when Akira's own are so much greater. When Nanis presses him to reveal his own stats, Akira remains quiet, distrustful of the king and the narrative concerning the demons. He makes the choice to keep his powerful class a secret and casts a spell to conceal his presence. Nanis, noticing he's vanished, thinks he just left and decides to leave him alone. Once everyone completes their tests, the priest informs them that he will prepare special equipment and instructs them to rest in their rooms. Relieved that he wasn't discovered, Akira follows the other students without being noticed. As he walks along, he spots a camera in the hallway, which makes him realize the king is indeed monitoring the students, thus confirming his deep suspicions. What Akira doesn't realize is that a knight is watching him from the shadows. Later that night, he finds an abandoned warehouse and decides to sleep there. After he has rested, he chooses to explore the castle, seeking information, and gazes at the city's peculiar landscape. He is amazed to realize that he is truly in another world. Leaping between the towers, he discovers his powers are superhuman. Then, he hears voices in a nearby room and conceals himself to eavesdrop. He listens to the princess telling the king that the students are just naive children with special classes. The king, full of confidence, commands her to initiate the plan, and she then exits the room. Hidden, Akira watches the king, thinking to himself that he could easily eliminate him. The king feels a shiver down his spine, but upon turning, he sees no one and returns to his duties. The following day, Akira eats his lunch in peace, yet he continues to maintain his inconspicuous presence. Akira contemplates whether he should inform the other students about the king's schemes, yet he concludes that no one would give credence to his words regardless. At a nearby table, Tsukasa rises and informs everyone that the king has bestowed a great favor upon them by summoning and granting them powerful abilities. He declares that they must unite and repay the king by defeating the demons. Everyone enthusiastically agrees to support their hero, while Akira realizes they've all been tricked by the king's fabricated story. Following lunch, Saran, the commander of the Night Guard, brings together the heroes for training, boasting that he is the country's last line of defense. His partner, Gilles, reproaches him, reminding him to conduct himself with humility. Saran then informs them that they will undergo special training for 1 month before departing to a labyrinth to confront monsters. Aware that the students lack any prior combat experience, he attempts to reassure them by stating that he will assist them in their training. While the others get excited, Akira hangs back in the shadows, suspicious of the knight's true intentions. Deciding to investigate further, Akira slips away as Saran leaves the students in Gilles' care. As he approaches a fountain, Akira is surprised to hear Saran call out to him, believing his concealment spell had ended. But Saran calmly explains that the spell is in fact still active. He can only perceive him because he possesses mystical eyes, which are capable of detecting body heat. Suspicious, Akira puts his hand on his knife hilt, but Saran assures him he won't report him. Even though the knight serves the king, Akira hesitates, uncertain whether to place his trust in him. Saran then asks him to keep their meeting a secret and promises to help, causing Akira to finally lower his guard. The two sit down, and Akira says he wants to read the king's archives to better understand this world. Saran asks about his concealment skill level, and Akira responds that it's at maximum, but confesses that all his other skills are still at level 1, and he doesn't know how to enhance them. Surprised, Saran smiles and offers to train him, explaining that the royal archives don't contain anything truly useful. Akira is excited by the idea of getting stronger and exploring this new world, but he still longs to return to his family. Saran agrees with this, but counsels him to amplify his power until he discovers a path back to his homeland. Akira experiences a sense of guilt for receiving extensive assistance without offering anything back. So, the knight suggests he can pay him back by telling stories about planet Earth. Akira smiles, shakes his hand, and formally introduces himself as a sign of respect. During his training, Akira finds out that, in addition to humans and demons, elves and beastmen also exist in that world. Under Saran's rigorous mentorship, he undergoes strenuous exercises and discovers that class levels advance solely by conquering monsters, while skill levels improve through individual practice. As the days go by, Saran becomes fascinated by the stories about Earth and its technology, finding it all both incredible and mundane. Akira, for his part, begins to yearn for his former world. Later, Saran is in conversation with Gilles, who questions why he dedicates so much of his time to Akira. The knight responds that the boy's stories are simply too good to pass up, and Gilles also expresses curiosity. When Saran reveals that Akira is actually the true hero, with an ultimate concealment ability, Gilles is utterly stunned, as only the very first legendary hero of their world possessed such a skill. Soon after, Akira walks into the room and gives Saran a book he retrieved from the king's private collection. He explains that its content is quite troubling, and Saran confirms this, stating the volume describes a plan to dethrone the king. Akira subsequently uncovers that Saran himself authored the book, cleverly disguising it as nothing more than a plain cookbook. The knight reveals that the king is a cruel man who wants to control the world for his own gain. Akira remembers the summoning program and reflects in silence. Saran explains that many royal knights have their own issues with the king and plan to remove him from power without resorting to violence. Impressed, Akira comments that, as an assassin, he could easily eliminate the king without being noticed, but confesses he hesitated to do so on the first day. Saran understands him and says that having an assassin class doesn't force him to kill. Akira agrees, stating that he couldn't stand for his family to learn that he had become an assassin. The knight commends him for his prudence, expressing that he trusts him precisely because he displayed wisdom and discernment by not blindly accepting the king's words. To Saran, this indicates that Akira is someone capable of handling his own problems and isn't easily deceived or misled. The boy falls silent for a moment, and in a quiet voice, he reveals that he never received much attention when he was a child. Saran is surprised by the confession, and Akira adds that he is the only person who has ever praised him so much in his entire life. Smiling, Saran asks Akira if he would be willing to assist him in peacefully dethroning the king as a means of returning the recognition he had been given. Akira replies that he will consider the matter and then exits the room. After a full month of training, Saran announces to the students that the group will explore the great labyrinth of Kanina. A crowd gathers to bid farewell to the heroes, and Akira is quite surprised by all the attention they are receiving. As he watches the crowd, he notices a girl watching from a distance and approaches to ask what she's doing there. The girl, visibly annoyed, states that her people had made immense sacrifices to summon these heroes, and he ought not to behave as though utterly clueless. Confused, Akira explains that he isn't aware of the specifics, so she responds that they will reunite once he uncovers the truth. Soon after, the heroes enter the labyrinth and begin an intense battle against monsters. One of the students inadvertently activates a trap which then attracts giant ogres. Akira eliminates one of them and asks Saran if they should retreat. The knight agrees, saying he will clear a path for the students. Saran then unleashes a powerful divine sword magic, destroying all the monsters ahead. However, as the group passes through the gate, they find even more creatures blocking the exit. Tsukasa then recalls a smoke bomb that the princess had provided for emergencies, and he decides to deploy it. The explosion takes out the smaller monsters, but out of the smoke emerges a gigantic minotaur, far more powerful than any of the ones before it. When Giles enters the room with the other knights and spots the monster, he is astonished that such a formidable creature appears on such a low level. Akira pushes forward to launch an attack, sidestepping the minotaur's blow and scaling its body. He attempts to strike the foe, but the hardened hide of the beast causes his blade to shatter into fragments. In shock, Akira dodges another attack and falls back to Tsukasa, who is exhausted and unable to fight. Feeling guilty, the hero admits he cannot face the monster, but Akira encourages him, telling him that he needs to put his trust in his companions. He reminds him that they were all trained to fight, but Tsukasa starts to panic, convinced he's failed as a hero. Akira notices something strange and asks the dispelling mage to examine Tsukasa. The girl then steps forward and casts a powerful spell, which uncovers and lifts a demonic curse that had been responsible for his despair. With the hero now recovered, Akira positions himself next to Saran and asks if he may utilize a particular technique. Saran nods and summons a bolt of lightning that stuns the minotaur, astounding the astonished students. Seizing the opportunity, Akira moves like a shadow and stealthily appears behind the monster, preparing to unleash his ultimate dark magic. And so, that brings us to the end of episode 1.